Good evening, I'm Beth Offenbacker with Waterford, Inc., and welcome to this month's Green Career Connections. This is a program I hold on the fourth Monday of every month, and we explore a different topic each time that relates to green careers. And our topic for October is Careers in CSR, Corporate Social Responsibility. A little bit about me, I'm a coactive coach. A coactive coach is a particular kind of coaching, which is around serving as a guide on the side to you to help you focus on goals, to provide you with accountability, and to really deepen and forward the action, to really move you forward on the goals that you're looking to accomplish and hopefully take you farther in a very comfortable way than you might have gone on your own. My expertise is in working with individuals in the green industry, and you can see I have experience across the local, state, regional, national, and international levels, and as well in nonprofit, public sector, and in the private sector as well. I provide some other supports to individuals and to organizations with leadership effectiveness, coaching and consulting, and I have an expertise in stakeholder engagement management. So let's dive right into our topic tonight, which is on corporate social responsibility. And I love this infographic because I think it really describes the whole range of topics that CSR incorporates. There are so many elements to it, and I think each of us could look at this great word picture and immediately go to those core things that are meaningful to us. That might be the sustainability. I imagine it probably would be, given that all of us are green industry executives. It might be thinking about the relationships that exist on a community level, and community can mean a lot of different things. It can be a geographic community, it can be a community that's dispersed across a broad area, that stakeholders that share a common interest. It can also mean thinking from a corporate or an enterprise perspective about how effective that organization is being in fulfilling its commitment to the sustainable development goals. So there can be a whole range of ways that we can look at corporate social responsibility. And I want to spend a few minutes tonight talking about what some of those perspectives might mean from a career perspective. I love this quote that is from Irene Rosenfeld, who's past chairwoman and chief executive of Mondelez International. And Irene said that to build and sustain brands people love and trust, one must focus not only on today, but also on tomorrow. It's not easy, but balancing the short and long term is key to delivering sustainable, profitable growth that is good for our shareholders, but also good for our consumers, our employees, our business partners, the communities where we live and work, and the planet we inhabit. So a little bit of added emphasis there that I added, but this core shared perspective around doing good things that are good for the organization and for the people it serves and for the geographic area that surrounds that organization is a core component of corporate social responsibility. So I'm going to talk about these four different components for a few minutes, just to give you a framework of reference as we think about what CSR is. And from these perspectives of number one, what's its purpose? Number two, who uses it? Or to whom is it meaningful might be another way to ask that question. To talk a little bit about some reporting certifications. That's a question I get quite a bit in the work that I do with green leaders, and then concluding with some thoughts on some related fields to be mindful of. So first, let's talk a little bit about the value of corporate social responsibility and why organizations pursue it. First of all, it's a value-based orientation. And so when we think about CSR, there are some different ways that organizations perceive it. Traditionally, CSR has been thought of as corporate philanthropy in some ways, supporting community causes, showing that that organization has a relationship or some connection or appreciation for the work that an organization, often a nonprofit, is doing in a community that that organization also serves. So that's one that I think many of us are pretty familiar with. The second one is one that's become more prominent in recent years, and that's CSR as risk management. And I'll talk a little bit more about that as we go on. But essentially, it's looking at ways of mitigating risks to the organization and the work that it does by being proactive and having a corporate social responsibility strategy, by paying attention to these larger issues that surround the corporation or the organization, because there are nonprofits and government agencies that think about these issues. But what are the potential risks, and how can bringing a CSR perspective to the table help that organization mitigate or eliminate those risks? And the last perspective, when we think of purpose, is around value creation. And I'll explore that a little bit more. How can this lens bring some good things to the organization? And so I also want to share that there has been some difference over time when we think about European views and US views of CSR, and just speaking about those two regions specifically. In Europe, traditionally, this idea of corporate social responsibility really has taken hold, I think, to a larger degree than it has in the United States, although the United States is catching up for some reasons we'll talk about in a minute. And so it's really around kind of the idea of having a social license, if you will, that its connection is usually to an organization's functional areas such as procurement and operations, when we think of it from a corporate point of view. In the United States, there has been traditionally a community relations focus. So for example, I recently did a search on Indeed, the job platform that posts all kinds of openings, looking for corporate social responsibility jobs. And they usually came up with positions that are marketing related, communications functions. That doesn't mean that the organization isn't doing some of those things that are perhaps more measurement oriented, having to do with this aspect of sustainability. But in the United States, generally, there is not as strong a connection to the same functional areas that they are in Europe. Now, the exception to that is if it's an organization that is international in nature, then they may have that as more of their approach to managing that organization, because some of their business may be, or their operations may be in Europe or other parts of the world where this idea of CSR with a more measurement perspective has taken hold. So let me also draw on why there is a growing focus on CSR and where that's going too. So some of the data that's out there shows that more and more organizations are looking at corporate social responsibilities for financial reasons. You can see here a study in 2012 that firms with incentives to develop a high level of performance that aren't engaging in this kind of a strategy are penalized by the market. And that particular study looked at the Dow Jones and some of the results from organizations that employed it and didn't employ it. Another piece of data to bear in mind is the huge impact that the sustainability market has. And here's a figure that says 12 trillion a year market by 2030, and that organizations are looking at it as a tool to help them drive profitability. Because, as you can see here in this last point, that there's some data that shows that products with sustainability claims generally outperform the growth rate of total products in their respective categories. So there are some real positives for organizations embracing a CSR perspective. And I've talked a little bit about this. Private firms, of course, that's a large proportion of organizations that think about CSR, and you can see some of the places in that organization that CSR might have a home. The public sector also thinks about CSR related topics quite a great deal. You can see a few listed there, really honing in on the SDGs and how we can accomplish them. That is the orientation that they have. And then there are some nonprofits that really focus a good bit in CSR. They are perhaps more an advisory or an education or a membership organization focus in the work that they do. Some of them offer their own certifications like Rainforest Alliance. So there is a range of communities where CSR is a focus. And so if you're looking for a job that connects with CSR, these are some ways, some entree points that you could think about as you work on your search strategy. So then let's turn to another question I get frequently from the people who I coach. Green leaders ask me, what certification could I have that would help me compete for a particular position? And so here are a few. One of them is LEED. You may know of that from the United States Green Building Council. And so you can become a LEED certified professional. GRI, the Global Reporting Initiative, is another one. Really great classes that they offer and certifications. They have some upcoming, a summit, in fact, one on the West Coast and one in Washington, D.C., that's focusing on reporting practices that you might want to take a look at. BREEAM is another certification that's really more around land use and thinking about development projects. CITES is a similar one to that. Again, you can get an individual certification as a professional. And then I think most of us are familiar with ISO standards that relate to how organizations standardizing those practices and really putting some measurement structures in place around how that organization carries out particular functions. And so here you can see two that are related to CSR 14001 and 50001. There are other ISO standards out there as well in other areas. So those are just a few of them that you might want to check out. And I also want to draw in a little bit of ESG. One of the things that I think I've started to see, and this recent article on the blog from NPower talks about the movement toward more measurement in the CSR field. There's a tremendous emphasis on it, but that this particular article highlights that ESG is replacing CSR. Now, what's ESG? ESG is environmental social governance. And so it's really around better business performance. This is a great graphic from a recent conference that focused on ESG. So talking about really getting into the details of thinking about how that organization interfaces with the physical environment, society and communities, and then the last, how the company is governed. And so really trying to draw some parallels between each of those segments and what the bottom line impact might be to an organization. And so this article makes the point that ESG is really coming more to the forefront. I think that's something that I'm curious to see if that will happen, but I'm starting to hear a lot more about it. And why that's an important development to be mindful of is ESG is often connected to the financial side of the sector. And so being able to demonstrate performance then will draw further investment in a particular industry or an organization. And so being mindful of that is something that we should all pay attention to from a job search perspective. Follow the money. Where is investment happening? That's where hiring is going to occur usually as well. So just something to be mindful of as this continues to evolve. And then I also want to draw on the green economy map, which I talk about a good bit in the programs that I do with leaders in energy and in other workshops and in my career coaching. And so this map I think is really instructive because it really lays out the green economy in just one great image. And so when you think about those different certifications that you might want to be pursuing and what part of the corporate social responsibility sector you want to focus on, be mindful of where you're landing in the green economy map. What do I mean by that? Well, for example, if you are thinking about that you really feel comfortable working in the built environment over here, you might be thinking about getting a LEED certification or that SITES certification or BREEAM, for example. If you're really thinking about some of the supply chain issues around circular economy and tracking through the procurement side of the organization, auditing features, things like that, that really demonstrate that the company has tracked where everything comes all the way through, that you're buying things from responsible sources, that there isn't child labor involved, all those other elements, you might be thinking about this particular segment of the green economy map. And so thinking about maybe a GRI certification might be a better fit for you, or looking at one of the ISO or some of those other related certifications. So just something to be mindful of, and as you consider where you want to land, the certifications have something to do with that, and as you consider your search strategy. Okay, now how does this roll all up to your search strategy? So one of the things that speaking about where you want to land in that particular quadrant of the map connects with is what I've developed, the green career map, which corresponds. It's got 16 different elements, but what we've really been talking about when we consider the corporate social responsibility aspect of the green industry is we're really talking about the market. We're really focusing on this part of your search. And one of the things I explain in the workshops and the coaching that I do is really to be mindful of what current developments are, what's going on in that particular market and that particular aspect of the industry, so that you can make sure that your offer, that's the portfolio part of the green career map, is a good fit for what's going on in the market. And so what do I mean by that? So here are a couple of other ways that to peel that element back. Thinking about what CSR challenges or needs do companies, agencies, and nonprofits have today, depending on where you want to land, the kind of organization you want to work for. Which part of the green economy map are you focusing on? I spoke about that a minute ago. And then thinking about what relevant professional development and training do you have in the last 3 or 5 years? So you might have some of those certifications or have begun them. That is always a great starting point. But to set up a schedule for yourself to think about, if that's your goal, to land a job in CSR, doing a little bit of homework. What are the common certifications that people have in that particular part of the map you want to work in? And then setting up a schedule for yourself so that you can start to accumulate those certifications. And then last of all is education, thinking about how the work that you've done in the past in terms of your education, any college that you have, might tie up to where you want to land professionally. And so sometimes people will say to me, you know what, I have a degree that is not in an environmental subject area. I have a degree in communications, for example, or I have a degree in accounting, but I'm really passionate about this work in the green industry. Is there an opportunity for me to land a position? And I would say absolutely. One of the things I hear all the time from recruiters is that, HR people, is that organizations need people with all kinds of skills. And so whether or not you have a background in the green industry, it in most cases is going to connect with an organization that works in the green industry. So part of the work that I do with people is help them put all those pieces together. So I would take a step back and think about your education and how that might connect with some of these different certifications that you could get, and again, connects with the challenges or the needs that a particular organization might have from a CSR perspective. So just one quick note before I wrap up. I have recently started our Green Career Momentum program. This is something Waterford is doing in conjunction with Leaders in Energy. It began on October 22nd. You are encouraged to join if you'd be interested. Our second session is coming up in November 5th. So there's still an opportunity. We have a couple of seats available. I'd be glad to talk with you about that and see if it might be a good fit for you. So you can direct message me or put a message in the chat or drop me an email to find out more about that particular offering. And so I conclude by asking you the question, where are you headed next in your career? And if I can be a support to you in doing that, please let me know. I would be glad to talk with you about that.